Algebra 1, Lesson 31. Hope you guys are having a great day today. Let's get started. We are on page 126 of your book. For the problems here, because these are word problems, we are going to read them out of the book and then I'm going to work on them on the board after I read them. So word problems use what we've learned in, not the last lesson, but a little bit of what we've learned in the last lesson. But the part that is the most challenging is the part from lesson 29, algebraic phrases. This is the whole point of learning those algebraic phrases, is so that you can look at a word problem, translate it into an equation, and then solve that equation. So let's look at example 31.1. It says, the sum of twice a number and 13 is 75. Find the number. So we have to break this down and change this, convert this from words into an equation. So for example, we know that the sum of twice a number and 13 means that you're adding twice a number and 13. When you add, or when you have twice a number, that is represented by 2n. So that is twice a number, and you're adding it to 13. Now your problem says that this sum is 75. That means that 2n plus 13 equals, because is and equals really mean the same thing, so equals 75. And now I have an equation that I can solve to find out the number. So I begin by getting rid of my constant term, so my whole number, which is 13. Since it's positive, I need to subtract it from both sides to get rid of it. Leaves me with 2n equals 75 minus 13, is 62, divided by 2, divided by 2, n equals 31. That's my answer. Now I'm going to check it. I check it by putting 31 in place of n. 2 times 31 plus 13 equals 75. 2 times 31 is 62 plus 13 equals 75. 62 plus 13 is 75. 75 equals 75. My answer checks, so I am good to go. Okay, that's our first example. Let's try another one. In example 31.2, it says, find a number such that 13 less than twice the number is 137. Okay, so we have to break this down. Let's first focus on the part that's in front of the is. 13 less than twice the number. So twice the number, how do we represent that? 2n, just like in the problem before. 2n. It says 13 less than this. That means I'm subtracting 13 from 2n. And it says that 13 less than twice the number is, so equals, 137. Okay, now I have an equation to solve. I'm going to start by getting rid of that 13, so I will add it to both sides. Whoops. So that leaves me with 2n over here equals 150. Now I divide both sides by 2, and I get n equals 75. I put 75 back in place of n in order to check. 2 times 75 minus 13 equals 137. I multiply 2 times 75, which gives me 150 minus 13. And then I subtract 13 from 150, it gives me 137. My answer checks, so 75 is indeed my answer. All right, let's do the next one. Example 31.3. Find a number such that if 5 times the number is decreased by 14, the result is twice the opposite of the number. Okay, so here we see that we're going to have 2 variables. Not 2 different variables, it's 2 of the same variable. So just watch carefully as I put together this problem. So it says find the number such that if 5 times the number, let's start there, 5 times the number, 5n, is decreased by 14. So decreased by, that is there doesn't mean equals, it means it goes with the is decreased by. So it is decreased by 14. That means minus 14. So if 5 times the number is decreased by 14, the result is, so that means equals, twice the opposite of the number. Well, we know that twice is, 2. The opposite of a number is negative n. Now I wrote this down here to show you that you don't need to write it like this. You can, and this is perfectly acceptable, 2 times the opposite of the number. But there's a slightly less complicated, for lack of a better word, less complicated way to write it. And I showed you this the other day. What is 2 times negative n? Well, that 2 becomes negative because it's like multiplying this by 2 times negative 1n. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2, and then n. So this is the same as negative 2n. So I'm going to write it like that so I don't have to have the parentheses and feel like my problem is more complicated than it is. Okay, so this is twice the opposite of the number. We have our opposite right there and then 2n. All right, first things first, I need to combine my like terms. Now usually I prefer not to have a negative, but I'm going to go ahead and move that 5n, that way I don't leave a 0 over here. So I'm going to subtract 5n from both sides. And remember, subtracting a negative from a negative is the same as adding a negative. So I have basically negative 2 plus negative 5, which gives me negative 7. So I have negative 14 equals negative 7n. Well, now I just do the same thing I always do. I divide by my coefficient, which is negative 7. Divide both sides. Negative 14 divided by negative 7. Remember, when you have 2 negatives or an even number of negatives with multiplication or division, then your answer will be positive because your negatives cancel out. So it becomes 14 divided by 7, which is 2. This is just n, so I have 2n. Okay, let's check it. 5 times 2, minus 14 equals negative 2 times 2. 5 times 2 I know is 10, minus 14 equals negative 2 times positive 2. Well, you have 1 negative, so that means your answer is negative. Equals negative 4. 10 minus 14, well, we subtract. 14 minus 10 is 4. Negative 14 has the larger absolute value, so it's a negative 4. Negative 4 equals negative 4. My answer checks, so 2 is my answer. All right. We've got 2 more problems before you do your practice. 31.4. Find a number which decreased by 18 equals 5 times its opposite. So I have here a number decreased by 18. So that would be n minus 18 equals, it says 5 times its opposite. Well, remember the opposite is negative n times 5. That's negative 5n. Okay, now I'm going to subtract n so I can have n on only one side. Leaves me with negative 18 equals negative 6n. Divide both sides by negative 6. My answer is going to be positive. 18 divided by 6 is 3, so I get 3n. To check, I put 3 in both places. 3 minus 18 equals negative 5, not minus 3. Woo. Negative 5 times 3. 3 minus 18, that's 18 minus 3, which is 15. Answer is negative. So negative 15 equals negative 5 times a positive 3. Answer will be negative. 5 times 3 is 15. Answer checks, so 3 is correct. Okay, one more. We get the same result if we multiply a number by 3 or if we multiply the number by 5 and then add 2. Find the number. Okay, so this is written a little bit differently, but you need to recognize that it's the same thing. It's telling you to look for an equation. So it's saying we get the same result. That means that one side is going to be equal to the other side. So here's the first side. If we multiply a number by 3, where you see that or, that's dividing it into the second part. So if we multiply a number by 3, that would be 3n, right? 3 times a number. Or, so that would be the equals part, if we multiply the number by 5 and then add 2. So we have to multiply the number by 5 and then add 2. And that's all you have to do. I'm going to subtract 5n from both sides so I can get my variable just on one side. I get negative 2n over here because 5 minus 3 is 2. The larger absolute value is negative, so my answer is negative. So negative 2n equals 2. Whoops, don't know what's happening with my lines there. Okay, divide both sides by negative 2. N equals 2 divided by negative 2 is negative 1. Okay, let's check it. 3 times a negative 1 equals 5 times a negative 1 plus 2. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. 5 times negative 1 is negative 5 plus 2. Well, a negative plus a positive, that means you subtract. Take the sign of the absolute value, or the sign of the larger absolute value. So this side doesn't change, it's negative 3. 5 minus 2 is 3. Larger absolute value is negative, so it's negative 3. Negative 3 checks. So n equals negative 1. All right, go ahead and do your practice. Okay, you should be back from your practice now. Letter A, your equation should have been 4n minus 8 equals 92. And your answer is n equals 25. And yes, you needed to check your answers. Make sure that you're checking it. Letter B, your equation should have been 4n minus 12 equals negative 2n. And your answer is n equals 2. Okay, that's all that we have for today. Go ahead and do your lesson. Let me know if you have any questions.